Hello, everyone. Welcome to the program. This is Sunday Politics live on Channels Television. I'm Seun Akinyemi here in Abuja. Let's bring you up to speed with what is happening as far as the elections are concerned across some of the 12 states where these elections have been conducted. INEC has conducted by-elections in the different constituencies, state and federal constituencies, to fill in empty and vacuum seats in state and national assembly seats. And those elections, some of them are majorly announced and concluded. Tonight, our attention is on global politics and global peace. What we have seen in the past few hours is a meeting, one that you will say is unusual, characterized by a lot of uncertainty. Russian leader and American leader, both of them have met in Alaska, a meeting that both leaders say are successful. But in the heart of all of these meetings is one fundamental issue, a war between Russia and Ukraine that has damaged aspects of global economy and peace. And those who are asking the question, when will this war end? Who will blink first? A lot of people have died, and perhaps what first shocked the world was the economic aspect of it as the violence erupted in Ukraine and in Russia. What leaders have intervened, but to no avail. But tonight, let's get a sense of what this means, because whatever happened in some part of the world affects the rest of the world, especially Russia and Ukraine matter has affected and impacted greatly on global politics. Tonight, what has been characterized as an unusual and a very significant meeting between these two leaders and how it will eventually impact on the rest of the world has gotten a lot of people talking. Tonight, I have joining me a professor of political science and former external affairs minister, Professor Bolaji Akinyemi, is live for us on the program. Thank you so much, Prof, for joining us tonight on the program.
Thank you, Seun. Honored to be invited to join your program.
Thank you so much indeed. Did you ever see Mr. Putin going to America on American soil, especially on the case of Ukraine?
On a military base, for that matter.
Absolutely.
These are interesting times diplomatically. There are losers and there are winners. Now let's first talk about the losers of the Alaska summit. The first is the international community, because there is an outstanding International Criminal Court warrant for the arrest of Putin. And yet, the United States allowed him on American soil. Yes, it is true that the United States is not a member of the ICC, the International Criminal Court. So to that extent, the U.S. could claim that it is not legally under, it's not binding for it to have arrested Putin. But as the most powerful country in the world, its behavior undermined the legitimacy of the ICC, the International Criminal Court. So, the court is a loser, but it is the international community that got together to sign the Treaty of Rome in order to prevent things like genocide, the international humanitarian law against war that set up the ICC, which is a loser. That's number one. Second is Europe. This war is being fought on the soil of Europe, and yet Europe was sidelined. It was not invited to Alaska. The third loser is Ukraine, with Zelensky as the president. He is the other protagonist in this war. He wasn't invited to Alaska. The fourth loser is the United States itself. I have never, since I've been studying diplomacy, heard of a situation where a president will go to a major summit like that and not be prepared. There's no doubt that Trump acts by impulse. You don't act by impulse on a major issue like that. The main winner is Putin, because Putin, that had been marginalized and sidelined internationally for how many years now, was released from, I would say, the cell of isolation where he was put because he was dodging the ICC warrant. Here he is, or here he was being received by the most powerful man in the country, red carpet and everything. Number two, if you put together all the years of experience of his advisors that he took with him, compared with the ignorance, I will put it, of Trump's advisors, he went prepared. And in any case, he's been president of Russia for how many years? So he had under his belt experience.
So, Prof, let me ask you, with your many years experiencing and studying global diplomacy globally, does this move a needle towards peace in any case?
Of course, no, it doesn't. And there is one last evidence I wanted to draw your attention to. When the foreign minister of Russia turned up in Alaska, he was wearing a T-shirt. And what was it written on that T-shirt? Soviet Union. So it's not Russia, Soviet Union. In other words, the aim of Putin was to reconstitute the Soviet Union that was dissolved, when the Soviet Union fell into pieces. And he was telling you that his first nation he was going to grab was Ukraine. So he didn't move towards peace at all, because Ukraine had let it be known, and Europe had let it be known that they were not going to allow Russia to swallow Ukraine. Because if you allowed Russia to swallow Ukraine, they know that other nations like Georgia, like, all the Baltic countries that were part of the Soviet Union before were going to be the next target. So that Alaska summit did not move the world, did not move Europe, and did not move even the United States towards peace, a peaceful resolution of the war.
The bullets were being shot kilometers away, several kilometers away, but the impact was being felt in several countries of the world. First, we saw the issue with grains and the shortage and the energy crisis in several parts of the world. And even the economies of Nigeria and some part of the world felt it. Now, the stock and the markets are going to be watching what is going on. How much of an impact will this make when the world wake up tomorrow morning on this meeting? How significant do you think this could impact on global economy?
Well, already, as far as the Alaska summit is concerned, the main summit itself, we all know how jittery is made most of the world. You mentioned Nigeria just in passing, but I will say don't do so because of this war, Trump had put a tariff burden of 50% on India that was buying Ukraine, that was buying oil. If the alternative to Russian oil
on the implication, this is indeed one of a major global political event that will impact not only on global politics but on several national politics in every part of the world. You do know how much of that Russia-Ukraine violence and conflict has impacted on global economy, and how Nigeria also felt it in terms of energy, and it also impacted on inflation in several economies. So it's a big deal that this is happening, especially when the big boys on the global stage are in this kind of talks, and that's why we wanted to make sense of it all for you, to get someone who has had decades of experience, not only sitting at a table when leaders are talking about resolving conflicts and restoring peace to the world. Indeed, these two men that you see right on your screen will determine so much. The Russian leader and the American president. This conversation in Alaska, one man might not be present, but we do know that President Zelensky is due to be in Washington, to be in America rather, on Monday, perhaps a meeting in the White House after this conversation. Why was he not present? It's supposed to be a three-way conversation, but will Mr. Putin allow Zelensky to be in the room when this conversation is going on? And the kind of conversation that we understand held between both men, will it lead to peace finally in that region? Some of the asking we're hearing that President Putin has put to American president, will that be allowed? Will it be the case? But we'll find out. That's why we're speaking with Professor Bolaji Akinyemi. But let's go on a break. We have so much more to talk about. Thank you so much, everyone. Let's get back to Professor Bolaji Akinyemi, a former External Affairs Minister, Professor of Political Science, who is making sense for us what the Alaska Summit will be for global peace and order. Prof, thank you so much. Apologies for the outage of the connection there in communication. But give us a sense, and I was concerned about the economies of the world, of which we are a part of it, in terms of food, in terms of energy, in terms of transportation. A lot of things changed when that war started. From your own point of view, I know that Mr. Putin was bringing a lot to the table. Now that Mr. Zelensky was not in the room, a lot must be missing, because we understand that Mr. Zelensky might be in the White House tomorrow. But for this to be a lasting peace, and such that Russia will not look like a bully in the negotiation, what do you think would be fair?
Well, I think that there have been leaks from the decision arrived at in Alaska. And part of the leak is that the United States agreed with Russia that Russia could keep the area conquered, plus the rest of, the provinces that have not been conquered. But that in exchange, there will be this security guarantee for Ukraine. And the language that is being used is that even though Ukraine is not going to be allowed to join NATO, the guarantee that it will be given will be like Article 5 guarantee.
Seems to be having some troubles again with the connection with Prof. But let's bring in yet another conversation that we might be engaged in. All right. Go ahead, Prof. Sorry.
Have we been cut off?
No, we're back. Go ahead, please.
Okay. That an attack on one member of NATO would be like attack on all members. Therefore, the kind of guarantee that will be offered Ukraine is that an attack on Ukraine will be like an attack on all members of NATO. That is the kind of security guarantee that is being talked about. Now, if that is true, it will be difficult for Ukraine to reject that kind of guarantee. And the reason why almost all leaders of Europe are following Zelensky to Washington is to ensure that it's not bullied.
So much of a trouble tonight with the connection. But let's take a look at some other issues relating to Nigerian local politics. Yeah. Since Prof is back.
All right. No, I was saying that we seem to think that the war between Russia and Ukraine is a localized war. It isn't. Russia, since the time of the Soviet Union, had always been regarded as a danger to the whole of Europe. That's why NATO was formed. So in a way, in Europe, European leaders following Zelensky to Washington is a message to Trump himself that what affects Ukraine affects the whole of Europe. And to that extent, they are showing support for Europe, for Ukraine. But I must have say that the reason NATO was formed was that without the United States, Europe cannot stand up to Russia. And that has never changed. So I'm hoping that the meeting on Monday in the White House, Trump will keep that in mind, that it is not only the interests of Ukraine that are in danger, it is the interests of Europe. I was, before we got cut off, trying to point out that if Trump decides to do to Europe, European countries buy oil from Russia, what he has done to India, then Nigerian oil will be at a premium as an alternative to people who don't want tariffs as a punishment on them for buying Russian oil. So Nigeria could find itself being affected by what has been going on in Europe in the past 48 hours. We have to watch very closely what's going to happen tomorrow. It's not a foreign, yes, it's a foreign policy issue, but it also can become a domestic economic issue for a country like Nigeria.
In all, Prof, what do you think would be a major lesson that you think that the whole world, the rest of the world, unlike Nigeria, could learn or take away from the conflict between Russia and Ukraine? What do you think that conflict has taught the rest of us?
It is a big lesson for countries in the global south. Don't get yourself caught in a conflict between the big boys. In a way, Putin is absolutely right that he had an understanding with the United States that NATO countries, that when there was the disintegration of the Soviet Union, there was an agreement that NATO will not move east to share a common frontier with Russia. It is the United States that broke that agreement, and Ukraine then found itself caught in the middle. The United States, especially when Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State, pushed a section of the elite of the Ukrainian Republic into a confrontation with Russia. Fortunately, we have short memories because there are so many crises going on in the world. But I remember that it was the CIA that I encouraged a coup in Ukraine that overthrew a president that was supposed to have been pro-Russia, and he had to be airlifted by helicopter out of the presidential ground. And there's a recording of Hillary Clinton saying, no, this is our candidate. This is the person we want. We will make money available for the election. So Putin is right that there was a coup in the Ukraine to start with before Zelensky then won the so-called election. But the direct answer to your question is, don't let nations in the global south avoid becoming pawns in the conflicts between nations in the global north. Let us define our own national interests very narrowly, that it does not become part of the national interest of any of the global powers, whether it is Russia, whether it is the United States, whether it is China. We should all be careful. And especially a country like Nigeria, that we call ourselves the biggest black power in the world. We should pay very close attention to the implication of what we call ourselves. The black population of the world look up to us. And to that extent, we should take ourselves seriously. And we shouldn't get ourselves caught on the side of any of the global powers. We ourselves are a medium power, and we should be serious about that.
Professor Bolaji Akinyemi, words of wisdom there. And for whoever is listening, I think this is enough. For what they say is enough for the wise. But thank you so much for sharing your decades of experience in diplomacy and global politics with us tonight. Professor Bolaji Akinyemi, a former Minister of External Affairs and Professor of Political Science. Thank you so much indeed for tonight.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Time.